wall. We are talking about reducing inflation. We are talking about being able to make sure that the local economy in America grows by putting tariffs on goods that are coming into the country, or at least threatening tariffs for better negotiations, so that the local economy in terms of car manufacturing, the local economy in whatever stuff is happening within the U.S. can actually have a fair competition, with the rest of the world. I think that that's basically how it should be done, and we should be able to look at the template or the blueprint of the first administration of Donald Trump and see how we can be able to forecast that within the second administration, but most likely how we can be able to focus that so far as the continent of Africa is concerned. Frankly speaking, I don't understand. I mean, like, you need to wake me up, you need to shake me. I need somebody to tell me something. I don't understand exactly how most of us do not even see that. And I see African Americans, black people, first generation Africans in the United States of America, they'll look at you, if somewhat you're a Trump supporter or you're conservative like myself, they look at you and they think for 1 second that you're some kind of a white supremacist or some kind of a brainwash. I fight white supremacy every single day. All right, I fight white supremacy, with every ounce of my breath. But the reality is that I understand stupidity when I see it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Stanley FONGOD. Moving forward, like you said, one of the mottos of the new president of the United States, Donald Trump, is making America great again. Now, in that line, we have the Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman, Maria Zakharova, who made a statement pertaining to the U.S. elections, and she affirmed that Americans must first overcome some of the internal divisions that are within the country. Now, in line with Donald Trump's motto, when you look at the changing dynamics at the global stage, how does this two correlate?
Well, I think to say that we need to be able to solve the issues that we are facing within the United States of America, internally, that's true. But we have to, first of all, understand exactly where this is coming from. This is coming as a result of the media, The media. Look, in America, I think the media approval rating is like 31%. It is bad. And the reason is because almost everybody on television is a political hack. It is somebody who is trying to lecture each and every one of us, how bad things are and how bad Donald Trump is. And as a result of that, okay, those who are Democrats, the fringe elements of the Democratic Party, increasingly align themselves with the most extreme groups of that party. And because there is someone on television, on CNN, MSNBC, and all of these left-wing media outlets that is singing and drumming these songs, that this is exactly how things ought to be. And this has led to at least 2 assassination attempts on the life of President Donald Trump. And this is just the way things are. You see, we need a media that will be able to report on the truth. I don't care what your opinion is. Your opinion is irrelevant. What I need you to do is to state facts to me, and then let me use my own 2 functioning brain cells to be able to decipher what the truth is. And I think that as long as we do not have a media that is fair, that is free, a media that will allow the people. If you look at a company like CNN is actually on sale right now. They are looking to sell CNN. Somebody is looking to sell MSNBC. All right, these are Comcast with MSNBC. They're looking for somebody to buy it. Why? Because it's not making any money. And the reason is because nobody trusts those outlets anymore. Everyone is online. The new media platform right now is actually on the internet. It's basically watching somebody on their podcast. It's basically watching someone on some YouTube channel. That's the way things are going right now. Nobody cares about CNN. Nobody cares about MSNBC. Nobody cares, frankly, about Fox News. No one cares or about any other local channel, because they basically sing from the same song sheet. All right, so that's just the way it is. And unfortunately, they have not gotten the memo, that the American has absolutely moved on. We need to be able to listen to the people who we trust will speak the truth to us. There are guys online who are getting more viewership in America than the legacy media outlet channels. More viewership online. Get that, let that sink in. All right, more viewership. It's like showing up in Africa and then some guy in Cameroon is getting more viewership than what's been, for example, showing up Cameroon, and someone in Cameroon is getting more viewership who is on YouTube than what is being pushed or propelled through CRTV. All right, you can say that for Nigeria with AIT, NTA, you know, and whichever news channel it is out there in Nigeria. You can say that for Nigeria as well. But that's the new avenue, and the reason for that is because the big corporate in this whole entire thing is the news media outlet. During the pandemic, we were told, and this is when, you know, the truth started really filtering out. You were told that if you took a certain, I don't want to call the name over here because it's not going to help your channel, but if you took a certain medication because you were sick, and if you took that medication, it was going to help you, and then so you don't have to catch the COVID thing again. Unfortunately, that was a false statement. All right, and it was, on CNN said this pandemic was the pandemic of those who have not been vaccinated. That was a false premise. I mean, false premise across the board. So you push people to go and take vaccines. Not that there's anything wrong with vaccines. The idea is when you keep lying, all right, you keep lying, and then you treat the rest of us as if to say we have no two functioning brain cells of our own. All right, like we are some kind of we are some idiots. So you have to lecture us as to what is good for us. We don't have the capacity to figure out what's good for us. When you have a news media organization that does not understand that you can't have boys going into girls' bathroom, that in itself makes no sense in the name of their transgender. What the hell is that? And that's the reason why I'm so excited, because we will, you know, at least for the next 4 years, we are shielded, and we need to prepare our people to have a massive pushback on this nonsense on the continent of Africa. We have to protect our values and our traditions. And for that, yes, sir, I supported Trump, voted for him, and I'm proud to say I did.
Thank you so much. Moving forward, this time around, let's get the intervention of Dr. NJIX LAGOKE, who is the assistant professor of history at the Lincoln University, reacting as far as the aftermath of the U.S. elections is concerned and what stakes it stands, or what opportunities it stands to pose for the African continent. Let's get a listen to him, and then we'll come back. We'll proceed to wrap up with this first topic of discussion. Yeah, can we get Dr. NJIX LAGOKE? Is that possible? So I was saying that we shall listen to an excerpt done for us by Dr. NJIX LAGOKE around the aftermath of the U.S. elections that took place with respect to what stakes it offers or what opportunities it offers for the African continent. Let's have a listen, and when we come back, we proceed with Dr. FONGOD to wrap up with this first topic of discussion. Unfortunately, we were unable to get him, but all the same, okay, thank you so much. We're getting him right away. We're hoping on the production department to get that sorted out. I'll likely conclude with you, Dr. FONGOD. Now, what are the stakes for the African continent as far as the aftermath of these elections, given that now the U.S. now has a new president, and of course his agenda first is prioritizing the development of his country, and more pundits said that he's going to reduce the amount of wars, it will be lesser wars between the United States and other parts. But then, what stakes are in for the African continent, and how can Africa prioritize itself to draw one or two lessons from this new president, given that he prioritizes America first? How can Africa prioritize itself first before getting to the global stage?
I think for starters, we need to start thinking a little bit more about what this presidency will do for the African. And the reason for that is because under his administration, we had no new walls. There were no new walls that were sprinkling out everywhere. Unfortunately, when the Joe Biden administration came into power, Russia and Ukraine started. What is happening in Gaza ensued. That will not have happened underneath Trump. Under Trump, the world was safer. Underneath Biden, the world became a whole lot more desperate. And this began with the botched withdrawal from Afghanistan. And you have billions, of weapons of war floating in the black market everywhere around the world as a result of the withdrawal that took place in Afghanistan. That in itself was criminal, to say the least, for the safety and security of the world. That being said, what does this mean for the African? Weapons of war heading to Ukraine finds themselves in the Sahel, all right, in Mali, as a result of whatever proxy groups are fighting on the continent of Africa against the Wagner group from Ukraine. And for sure, I don't know whether the United States of America has its blessing on it or not, or let me say the Biden administration or not, but these are the things that is happening, and we have to be able to say for a fact that if you have Trump in office, we will not have all these proxy wars that is taking place on the African continent. How come a weapons of war that was supposed to go to Ukraine ends up on African soil? That in itself is crazy. So we have to be able to celebrate Trump's victory, because for sure the continent of Africa will be left alone. That being said, the idea that Trump has to focus on America is great. It's good. I don't see anything wrong with that. Make America great again. Yes. So why don't we make Africa great again? Why don't we make Cameroon great again? Why don't we make Nigeria great again? What's this whole entire idea that we have to sit on the fringes and just wait for somebody to hand over something to us? Why? Why do we have to do that at the expense of our own natural resources? I think this is the time for Africa to negotiate fair trade with the rest of the world, to have somebody who is so objective, a businessman in the White House who is so objective, who speaks and tell you exactly what he means without mixing what is not a politician. He's an outsider. And so I think that that's what we need, and that's the kind of individual we need running the White House. And so if that was going to be the case, I'm quite optimistic with the African. The only person I really do not trust in this whole entire stuff is the African. Especially, I'm talking about, when I say the African, I mean those in power. Because if we have to make Cameroon great again, if we have to make Nigeria great again, what does that take? What do we need to do to be able to make sure that our countries become, a tourist destination for the rest of the world, not just for the safari and effects of it, but that we are actually doing something that is meaningful. Unfortunately, it's a lot has to be done in that space. But I'm still optimistic that with making America great again might inspire a lot of African youth, will inspire a lot of African leaders to be able to understand that we need to make Africa great again. I think that if there be anything that we need to do as a call of duty, not just to ourselves, but to the future generation, to our children and great-grandchildren, is that we leave a continent better than how we made it. We leave a continent healthier than how we met it. We leave a continent more prosperous than how we met it. That in itself will be maintaining the legacy of our forefathers, making Africa great again, so that men like Mansa Musa, can be able to look back at the continent and see just how great it's become as a result of the values that we ourselves have been able to embrace, not because somebody gave it to us, but because it's enshrined in our own DNA as Africans. We have no other choice but to make Africa great again. Thank God, Trump is making America great again, so let's do same for Africa.
And the plan is to make Africa great. Thank you, Manslayer, Dr. FONGOD. Now, ladies and gentlemen, without any transition, we shall move to the next topic, like we mentioned in our preamble for today, which focuses on the role of the media in times of elections. And of course, like we mentioned, the media plays a very key role when it comes to ensuring the elections are transparent, ensuring that elections are fair, free, and credible. And it's also crucial vital to shaping the democracy of each and every nation, be it on the African continent or outside Africa. And of course, with our guests with us, Dr. Stanley FONGOD, Pan-Africanist, CEO of CROSTON, FINTECH, and an economist. We are unpacking the second topic, and that will lead me to the first question for the day. Now, while we're looking at the media as, or the press as a tool that could shape the democracy of a country, as it stands, we have numerous countries on the African continent that have had crackdown on journalists or media professionals over the years. But then, how does the media help when it comes to shaping the democratic future of every nation?
Well, the free press is actually part of the tenet for any democratic society.
Absolutely.
You cannot have a democratic society where the free press does not exist. And I think that the free press platform is to be able to present a platform where there is debate. And I think that debate basically is the fundamental tenet of any democracy, that we can battle ideas, that we can be able to have, our ideas heard, not suppressed, that I have the freedom to tell you exactly what I think, how I feel about something without being oppressed because of my thoughts. That in itself, it's what a free press is supposed to present to the people. But when you have a press that is coerced, either by the government, it's coerced and aligned perfectly well with one political party, against another political party, as the case is in the United States of America, that does not serve the people well. And sooner or later, the masses will soon realize that this platform absolutely means nothing, and they will have to be able to go somewhere else to get their information. For example, just a couple of days ago, Donald Trump said that Liz Cheney, daughter of the Vice President Cheney, Vice President Cheney, who worked with George Bush in the 2000s, he said that he was a big problem. It was a big problem when you have a lady like that basically running around pushing for wars everywhere around the world. Why don't she go to take, why does she just go and stand in the war front and allow a gun to be pointed on her head? And let's see exactly how that goes. And everyone came out, especially CNN and the rest of those boys, and calling Donald Trump, absolutely crazy names, that he have called for the assassination of Liz Cheney, which that was not true. And they knew that was not true because they had the quote, but they tailored the quote in such a way that it basically presented itself as to say that's what Trump said. And so this is what is happening so far as the media is concerned. We have to be a little bit more responsible, absolutely, when we present the news. No matter whether we're not talking to children, we're talking to adults. Give us the news, not your opinion. And to also have a country, that suppresses the press so that you do not allow them to be able to say what they have to say. I just want to remind, most of our leaders that there is a Mali waiting to happen. There is a Burkina Faso waiting to happen. There is a Niger waiting to happen. And whether we like it or not, that's just the way things are. The moment you suppress people long enough, a time will come when there is nothing left that they will not be able to overcome to make sure that they never go back to the state in which they were in before. It doesn't matter what kind of fence you build around your house, that fence will not be high enough that an angry man who is desperate for change will not be able to scale that fence and meet you on the inside. There will be no AK-47 loud enough to scale the African when the African becomes desperate for freedom. That in itself, it's something that everyone in power needs to fully embrace and understand. Dialogue, it's the way. And for us to be able to have dialogue, freedom of the press. Sell us your idea. Tell us why we need to be able to vote for you. Tell us why we have to continue voting for you, even if you have to change the constitution to stay in power forever. Tell us why we need to do that. Show us something you have done that is meaningful. Whatever you do, you have to keep talking and allow us to keep talking as well. You cannot dissent. You cannot absolutely, stop folks from expressing their ideas and coming into the marketplace and with competing ideas, so that the more dominant idea, which is, you know, in the eyes of the people, in the marketplace of ideas, is bought more than your ideas. That's what we need. And we need those ideas to see which one is more viable as we build a society, as we move towards making, you know, the future better and brighter, you know, for our children.
Exactly. Now, the press has faced numerous challenges, and you agree that the press is not entirely free across the globe. But then, do you agree that the media aids to shape public opinion in terms of the population making decisions, especially in times of elections, because they inform the audience about what's happening on ground? Like I mentioned subsequently or previously in our preamble, the press, it's like the eyes and the ears of the population on the ground in times of elections. Like we just saw recently, the US elections that culminated in that part of the globe. How can the press or the media shape public opinion so that the population can make the right choices to bring the right people to power?
I am not a fan of the media, and frankly speaking, not because I think the media is not useful, but I'm looking at the media around the world, especially in the Western world. I'm looking at BBC, I'm looking at CNN, and I'm telling myself, you know what, these two media outlets, which are supposed to be the emblem of Western civilization as we know it now, you know, representing Western civilization, is as unfair and biased as they come. And yet BBC and you know, CNN, those are the two most watched news outlet around the world from the Western perspective. That in itself, it's absolutely quite shameful. So to say that they are the eyes of the people, it's more like they're the evil eye of the people. All right, because there's really nothing to be said about them. That's why probably the CNN, it's somebody's looking for how to sell it. MSNBC, you know, somebody's looking for how to sell it because it's not helping. And I think that if you look at the presidential elections of this 2024 in the United States of America, it has exposed the news media outlets, exposed them tremendously, because every lie they said has not worked. It worked in 2020, but no more. I mean, like, we've gone past that. You can lie all you want. I mean, there's still some folks who basically will buy the lie, but it's just a matter of time. You can lie anyhow, it still does not change anything. But yet, we need the media to be able to make informed decisions. If the media is telling us primarily about or reporting data and not interpreting the data, that's one thing, because, you know, don't tell me what you think. Just tell me what happened today and where. That's what I need to hear. Tell me exactly, you know, what the prices of things in the market. Don't try to lecture me on why the prices are up. I'll figure that myself. Tell me precisely, with a lot of certainty, you know, if the president is sick or the president is not sick. Whatever is in between that, that's my personal opinion. I will figure out what is going on. To report what is going on, don't interpret to me what is going on and think I'm stupid enough not to understand what's going on, and you have to tell me. In the process of you trying to be able to tell me what is going on, you know, with your own biases, laced with your own tremendous level of inconsistency, you know, for the truth, that in itself does not help, you know, bring the media to the level in which it's supposed to be. That's why in America, the opinion polls, people trust the media. Only 31% of American population out of 20-something million people actually trust the media. That's in itself, you know, should tell you exactly, you know, how the kind of how we trust the information that comes out of any news outlet. If somebody was going to tell me today, if I would turn to CNN or Fox or any other, I mean, CNN, MSNBC is primarily, if I was going to turn and other smaller local channels, if I was going to turn on to that TV channel and somebody says to me, you know, that I should run because Los Angeles is on fire, I probably would need to go to YouTube, go to, you know, TikTok or some other platforms to actually see Los Angeles burning before I would decide whether I'm going to run or not. I mean, that's just how sad it is. So we need to be able to make sure that there's some kind of credibility so far as the media is concerned. While we're talking about all the oppressions that, it's happening, let us also be able to take some kind of responsibility, no mindful word that we have lied, and lied. We have lied ourselves out of business, lied ourselves out of our integrity. And frankly speaking, I think that, I probably will be listening to ATM before watching CNN.
And I'll agree with you that the media is some sort of has to be factual at all times, and there is a saying, a journalism parlance that goes that facts are sacred, opinions are free. But then in that regard, when you look at the concept away from the United States, look at what's happening on the African continent or elsewhere, what do you believe, or in your opinion, what's the influence of the media in periods of political campaigns, before and after elections, as some sort of tool for follow-up? Because there is need for the media to be factual. There's need for the media to be unbalanced, or to be not to be biased, but to be balanced in its information reporting, and in terms of the way in which it disseminates information to the public. So during those times, that is during campaigns, before and after the elections, how can the media serve as a tool for follow-up, so the population gets to have or stay abreast with the information?
Well, I don't really think that there's much that the media can do, and the reason for that is because this level of corruption is enshrined in their DNA. What do I mean by that? We need to first of all understand who is running these media outlets, and who owns these media houses. So, and also who is advertising on their platforms. So if you have somebody who basically believes certain ideas and wants to be able to make sure that they sway public opinion in that particular towards that particular idea, and they are your big advertisers, obviously you will start putting out, or you will stop receiving ads from counter perspectives. You will have your political hacks on those platforms that pushes towards the same idea that those who are advertising on your platforms wants. And so that's what is actually happening in America as we speak. So you have companies like Big Pharma. When I talk about Big Pharma, this is just the pharmaceutical industries, which, frankly speaking, there are only two nations in the world, I think New Zealand and the United States, that allow these companies to actually advertise their medications on television. Now, which means if you came and you said, you know what, this particular medication, for example, it has X adverse effects, is creating this, is doing this, is doing that, but then this Big Pharma with billions of US dollars comes to a news, and say, news agency, and say, you know what, I'm advertising, I'm going to be paying X amount of dollars for my ads. And then I also want you to make sure that people with this kind of opinions, don't show up. And then what does that mean? So you have a news outlet that is pushing a particular agenda, without saying it outrightly that that's what they're pushing, but what is being reported on those platforms basically sway the whole entire population in a particular direction. So you're asking me, how can they become free? I think that we need to be able to make sure that whatever is being advertised on those platforms is actually open, it's fair. Those negotiations need to be made public. We need to know who owns this platform, and we need to know what is it that they're tied into. You cannot own this platform and you own some pharmaceutical companies, and you own any other company that will basically sway whoever is working on that network underneath you to be able to have a certain public opinion concerning something that in itself, is absolutely wrong. So I don't know how we have free and fair, press without the levels of, just tremendous influence in terms of who owns what, who is advertising where, as we see it around the world. That in itself is something that needs to be studied. Frankly speaking, I am just a little bit clueless as to how we do this. And the reason is because the ramifications and the tentacles of corruption runs tremendously deep so far as the media space is concerned.
So you said there should be many things that should be taken into consideration for press or the media to be free and fair. Now, in your opinion, what are some of those aspects that need to be taken into consideration to ensure that the press is free, fair, and balanced at all times?
Maybe I mean, I've always thought that if we can be able to have press that is tied to, a governmental structure, that might be better. But unfortunately, too, when somebody comes into power and then elects people who have to run those outlets, there we go, problems. I've always thought that maybe we have the press, and that the press is actually not supposed to be advertising certain things, especially when it comes to things that are political or things in the health space. They have to allow those who are professionals within those particular spaces to be able to talk about them. That in itself might be some kind of progress. For example, I don't think a journalist, I don't care what your name is, I don't care who you are, should be talking to me about health issues. A journalist does not, I mean, just because you went to journalism school does not mean you're an expert in health. Just because you went to journalism school does not mean somehow you fully understand what is going on so far as economic principles are concerned. Likewise, you are not an engineer. So when it comes to those particular spaces, you have zero opinion, none whatsoever. I mean, it's criminal for you to be talking in any of those spaces as an expert. In those spaces, you should not even open your mouth and say anything. Allow those who are experts in those particular fields to be able to step up to the plate and say, this is exactly what's going on, and from this, this is why we think that this thing should be. I think that will make tremendous sense. In that way, we also basically move away from misinformation, disinformation in all shapes and sizes, so that we can allow the public to get the information that they absolutely need. That, to me, might be a way in which we actually get things done. Secondly, I also think that those who basically own these media houses need to have full disclosure and how entangled they are so far as their businesses is concerned. Because I want to know if you're telling me that, for example, to those who live in Cameroon, for example, I'm going to use this as an example. If you're telling me that Supermon is better than Tangi water, I need to know if the person who owns Supermon, all right, has certain connections with the media house that is reporting that Supermon is better than Tangi water, and vice versa. We need to be able to understand that is there any intrinsic bias that is being pushed through these channels as a result of somebody's financial gain. Those are debates, those are things that we need to understand. Just like I said, the tentacles of corruption, so far as a media outlet is concerned, runs tremendously deep. I mean, we're talking about 18 to 20 feet deep, and with a lot of intricacies and all kinds of stuff. It's not just, it runs like the root of a gigantic olive tree. We need to be able to find ways in which we just make sure that if somebody is going to be reporting the news on any platform, let that person report the news, and then on the same platform we can have opinion segments, which is like talk shows. Then folks can say whatever they want to say, however they want to say it. But if you're going to report the news, we don't want you to report the news according to CNN. Don't report the news according to Fox News. Don't report the news according to BBC. What the hell is the news? Tell us what is going on, not according to your political persuasions.
Thank you so much, Dr. FONGOD. Thank you. That was a very intense contribution there. Meanwhile, we're moving forward. There is this quote by a media professional that says the media must be considered as a public good during elections, end of quotes. Now, from a different perspective, how would you assess the statements given that admits a few days ago we saw the International Day against impunity against the crimes committed against journalists? But away from that, we're seeing the media that it's playing a very key role, like I've mentioned since the beginning of this program, in trying to shape the future of each and every nation. Now, how does the media, how could it be considered as a public good? How can you evaluate that statement?
Well, it's, if you're going to write a well-researched paper on how the media can be considered as a public good, that means that we are taking the media, maybe it should be a media organization that just landed from Mars or came from Jupiter or something, and it just landed on Earth. It has no relations, it has, no political persuasions. These folks think in a vacuum. They are completely secluded from whatever is happening around the world. They're just reporting what they see. That might be good. But if you're talking about the media, working for the public good, that's great. Those are great ideas. But again, the problem is that most media outlets actually have political persuasions. They have intrinsic biases. They will think in a certain way, and unfortunately, that's just the way it is. My point is, it is not so much about what they say. Especially on those platforms, they can say whatever they want to say. That's the freedom of press. But when you report in the news, which means if you have a channel, if it's going to be for the public good, when reporting the news, if you're going to report the news, that news must be reported in its entirety. It cannot be somebody's statement is being chopped up to swing public opinion to one particular political candidate or the other. It has to be that whatever is reported, it's reported, with certain level of integrity and truth. If you're going to quote somebody, put out the entire quote. Don't chop up the quote so that somebody can sound like Hitler or somebody can sound like Mussolini. If you're going to say something about, if you're going to quote somebody, put the person's entire quote out there for the rest of the world to see, and we are not interested in whatever your opinion is. Let your opinion be in the opinion sections of your newspapers or on your TV channels. But when it comes to the news, if it's going to be an element for public good, it has to be that we report the news the way it is without any intrinsic biases.
Indeed, and it's often said that the role of the media or the influence the media has on politics cannot be underestimated. Now, we recall in 2013 on the African continent, precisely in Ivory Coast, we saw post-elections violence that took place back then when the ousted president or the outgoing president, Laurent Gbagbo, did not concede defeat, and that led to the demise of numerous persons in that part of the African continent, which was a very sad thing. But then when you look at present-day Africa, and of course how things are changing, there is this change in dynamics. When you look at the changes that are occurring, how can the media orientate and inform the audience with the right information in a bid to prevent such ordeals from happening?
I think that the media, for lack of a better term, needs to be born again. The media needs to really be born again. If you're going to use that from, I borrowed that word from a religious perspective to state that the media needs to reinvent herself. The media needs to be able to stand up for the truth. The media needs to understand her ethics. The media needs to be able to understand, her own morality, and should be able to speak the truth no matter what. And I think that the media needs to be in a position where everyone understands that once the media is interested in looking at the case, they will leave no stone unturned until they have discovered the truth. That the truth is not something that is according to anyone, that facts are not based on feelings, that facts are facts, and facts cannot be bent by emotions. Facts are just facts. Data is data. It doesn't matter how much you try to misinterpret data, data still stands to be data. And so that you cannot tell us exactly what your interpretation of a particular set of data is without telling us exactly what the data is. That we ourselves will have to be able to do those interpretations and look at those data by ourselves as consumers of whatever it's being pushed down by the media. I think that that is just the only way the media can be able to reinvent herself, going forward. That she really needs to be born again. She needs to basically comes to that place where she fully understands that there has to be a rebirth. There has to be a new way of thinking. Her ideas can no longer align with what it was that she was used to yesterday, which means she might have to lose money along the way, but then she's going to gain her integrity and she will be trusted again. That just simply means the things she used to do, she's no longer going to do it. All right, so all the alliances and all the biases, all of that is gone, and she just basically speaks the truth. On the continent of Africa, it's not so much that we have these intrinsic biases. I think that for the African continent, most likely we don't. We are actually fighting on the African continent more on suppression. We are fighting on the African continent because we have political hacks and put those in power who will want us to keep quiet and not speak the truth. I think those are the issues we face on the African continent. So the battles with the media is quite different across the continent. So on the continent of Africa, we need freedom. In the West, we need truth. But that being said, on the continent of Africa, I think that our freedom will come as a result of us basically liberating ourselves out of every idea that has been pushed down our throat, that we have to say what is politically correct, but that we just need to be able to report facts with no ideas. You don't need to have an idea, just state the facts. If you saw something, say something and leave it at that, and let the rest of the population basically deals with it at that, and say that no, what you reported was factual and this is the truth. Don't have your own ideas within it. I think that that's the model that succeeds on the African continent.
Exactly. I have a couple of questions before we wrap up this conversation this day. Ladies and gentlemen, meanwhile, if you're just tuning in, this is Talking Point over your Pan-African channel for you, Media Africa, where we're discussing this time around the role of the media during elections that is with a key interest, the African continent and beyond. Now, with our guests, we're trying to unpack where the media comes in terms of shaping the future of every country. Now, Dr. FONGOD, you've cited a lot of points, and of course, it's just to reiterate that it's imperative to note that in every nation there are set of rules and regulations that govern the way the media has been run in every part of the world. Now, it's true that we cannot go without censorships, but then when you look at some of the disparities, you look at some of the challenges that have been encountered by numerous media professionals across the globe, even in the African continent. Do you think that the issue of the media not being able to carry about its tasks, not just during elections or during the period of elections, could be at the level of the limitations in which the policies put in place have brought to the table that limits the way, or limits to what extent the media can go, or how far it can go?
When you talk about censorship, what does that really mean? Are you talking about censorship in relationship to the fact that the media, somebody needs to hold the media accountable for the things they say? Exactly. If that was going to be the case, then that's like what we call in the U.S. fact-checking, right? So yes. That some group or somebody has to fact-check what the media is saying, or whoever it is that they are fact-checking. But the question I want to ask is this: who is fact-checking the fact-checker? Who is basically also censoring those who are controlling the narrative? My point is there has to be free and fair conversations, and the media needs to be a platform that just reports what is true. Censorship in itself, so far as I'm concerned, it's absolutely not part of freedom of speech. If you're going to employ freedom of speech, you have to allow freedom of speech. Somebody might say something that you don't like, but it's freedom of speech. You cannot have, you cannot stop someone from saying what is it that they believe. You can only be able to help push and try to, at the best you can, to be able to help somebody think and see things the way you want them to see them. But the idea that you have to censor someone, you have to basically tell them you can think this, or this is exactly what it is, and then somebody becomes like an arbiter of truth and says that no, you can't say that because din itself is not this, it's not that. Who made you God over that? I think that that's the problem that we have on the African continent, because every government on the continent of Africa, especially during the elections, will say, no, what you said was not true, this goes against this, is inciting violence. No, it's freedom of speech, man. I mean, what? It's in, for example, I just with somebody, most of us had the opportunity to go to see what free and fair elections looks like, especially from an American perspective. Everybody here said whatever stuff they wanted to say, as long as it helped their own candidate win. All right, Trump was called Hitler. Kamala Harris, demented, stupid, unable to reason, no two functioning brain cells of our own. Everybody was called everything. But that in itself does not mean you have to censor anyone. Those days are over. We have to be able to just make sure that we have free and fair reporting and allow the people to be able to make up their minds. I'm not a big fan, of censorship. I don't care exactly where it's coming from. I think that is counterproductive to the tenets of free speech. If you are going to think, free speech simply means that you have given me the permission to think. Free speech means that you have given me the opportunity to think, and if I'm going to think freely, there are chances that I might offend you with my thinking.
Exactly.
And so you need to be able to allow me to think, and then even if I do offend you with my thinking, what you need to be able to do as a civilized society is to be able to help me understand through debate, why is it that you believe what you believe and why I'm not seeing things the way you're seeing them. That's the beauty of having public discourse.
Now, to wrap up this conversation, you have said there is a need for the media to exercise some sort of professionalism, some level of accuracy, be accurate in every information to disseminate to the public. They need to be impartial at all times during their coverages, during the times of elections, before and after, so as to deliver, as we said, they are supposed to be the eyes and ears of the population. But now, to conclude this conversation, Dr. FONGOD, moving forward, how can the media sharpen all its tools for it to be able to create more impact in society?
I think that the media really, just like I said, if there be any other thing else, is that the media should start reporting the news just the way it is, without any biases. That in itself would be the one thing that if it was done, then people's trust in the media will be there again. We cannot be in the situations where we are wrong again and again on issues, and the only reason why we are wrong on issues is not because we're reporting the news, it's because we're interpreting the news and telling the rest of the world what it is, and it turned out that whatever stuff we were saying is wrong. If a car accident happened somewhere in London, it's a car accident. Why don't you just report that it's a car accident? Why do you have to basically say the reason why the car accident occurred is because maybe the driver was on drugs? You don't have that information. But maybe because you have these intrinsic biases within you for whatever it is that you have with drugs and drivers, you began pushing that narrative. 3 months down the line, analysis is made, or maybe the person died, autopsy results comes out, and then it shows that, frankly speaking, the driver was not in any of that, situation at all. It was just a very bad accident that happened. But your news channel has been pushing this narrative about drugs and about, driving. That in itself, it's counterproductive to a free press. And if you do this consistently over time, nobody gets to trust you anymore. Just report the news. Just say, this is what is going on, that's what's going on, and that's okay. You don't have to try to interpret the news and interpret your own intrinsic biases, so that you can sway public opinion one way or the other. That is what the media should stay away from. Apart from that, especially on the African continent, just report the news, and believe me, report it to the best of your ability, and be a little bit more consistent in doing so. And if somebody paid you today for your public opinion, and if they can't pay you tomorrow for that same public opinion, they have 10,000 ways of getting at you for not basically singing from the same song sheet that they want you to sing out of. Free and fair elections can only happen on the African continent where there is a free press. That's a fact. Despite what is happening in the US, I'm quite optimistic about what Africa where Africa is going, and I'm quite optimistic that if the only issues we have on the continent of Africa is that most of our so-called democracies on the continent, it's fighting the press, that to me is something we can deal with, because I know that sooner or later those things will no longer be the case. But we have to make sure that we report the news the way it is, without any kind of an intrinsic biases. That to me is the way forward.
Thank you so much, Dr. Stanley FONGOD, for being our expert for today. Just to reiterate that you are a Pan-Africanist, the CEO of CROSTON FINTECH, and an economist. Thank you for joining us this day.
Thank you so much for having me, and let me get to my Trump celebration. Thank you.
Meanwhile, ladies and gentlemen, today, in the course of today's edition of Talking Points, we had as on the menu U.S. elections 2024, where Donald Trump has been re-elected as the 47th president of the United States, and we were asking ourselves the question, what this means for world politics. We equally touched the role of the media in times of elections. We say thank you for your keen attention all through today's edition of Talking Points. I've been NJIX NABESEH for presentation. Do stay glued to your Pan-African channel. Bye-bye.